My name is Patricia, and I'm 54 years old. I would say I'm just an ordinary woman, but my sister-in-law thinks I live a privileged life and don't understand the struggles of regular people, but I'll explain that later. My husband, Robert, is also 54, and we both work full-time. We don't have children, and my sister-in-law thinks I'm privileged because we live in a nice neighborhood. It's close to downtown Boston, Chinatown. In the subway station, my grandfather built a house on this land, and when my parents passed away, we moved in and gave up our apartment. My sister-in-law, who's 46, 8 years younger than me, visits us every few months. She leaves her husband and 12-year-old child at home and travels 2 hours to spend the weekend with us. She loves downtown Boston. Robert says she was spoiled as a child since she was born later in their parents' life. I, however, don't really get along with her. She's always making sarcastic comments like, "It must be nice growing up without struggles in a place like this." Her favorite thing to say is, "I grew up in the countryside with nothing fun to do, while you lived like a princess." Even though she doesn't seem to like me, she keeps coming to visit, especially because she loves Chinatown and downtown. But she never brings any gifts, always saying, "Even if I brought something, you'd make fun of it." When she's here, she talks about how nice it is to live close to everything, and how she has to rely on a car, living in the countryside. If I tell her I don't go out much because of work, she accuses me of bragging, saying, "What you really want to say is you live near all the tourist spots, unlike me." Her words can be pretty harsh, and I've told Robert, but he just brushes it off, saying, "Oh, my sister's just blunt. She's very straightforward." In the middle of all this, I heard that my sister-in-law was planning to build a house. During one of her visits, I asked, "Oh, where are you building it?" She replied, "Obviously near where I live now. Patricia, unlike you, I had to buy the land. I wasn't born with property to inherit, so I can't afford a nice area like you. It must be nice to be rich." At this point, I was really frustrated, so I asked her, "Well, how should I have asked that without sounding offensive?" She just laughed and said, "How about you stay quiet? Everything you say sounds offensive anyway." After that, I didn't say anything. I was completely left out of the conversation. But even though she wasn't talking to me, she still kept visiting more often. Actually, that's because Robert allowed it. I asked him, "Isn't it strange that your sister visits, uses our bathroom, eats our food, and ignores me?" He just shrugged and said, "Patricia, I told you, she's straightforward. You don't need to talk to her either. Plus, she leaves her husband and child at home, so we don't have to deal with them. You don't have to care about her." Still, one day she went to Chinatown, came back, used the bathroom, and went to bed without saying a word. The next morning, she ate the breakfast I made but didn't even say thank you and then left. I started to feel like our house had turned into a hotel. I felt like the cook, maid, and hotel manager all at once. I joked to myself that we should start charging her for a season pass. 3 months later, she came over again. She planned to explore the town and spent a long time talking to Robert in the evening. She stayed the night and left the next day, but Robert was super excited. He showed me some pictures and said, "Look at this, it's the house my sister built. Isn't it amazing?" He showed me a picture of a clean, white building. It looked brand new and very pretty. "Isn't it great?" he said, showing me another photo. But I was confused. It looked like a garage, but there was a mop in the picture, and it clearly wasn't big enough for a car. "Isn't it amazing?" Robert said excitedly and then shouted, "It's a garage for a motorcycle, and it's custom made. My Harley can't fit in here." What? I was completely shocked. "Yeah, like I said, my Harley can't fit here." "I don't get it. Isn't this your sister's house?" "Well, we've been talking about swapping houses for a while." I was stunned by what he said and dropped the plate I was holding. He continued, "She's been saying she likes this house's location for a while now, and I've been saying I don't like how old this place is since it's been in your family for generations." Then she said, "How about I build a new house, and we swap?" So, I had her add a custom garage for my motorcycle. "Wait, what?" He never told me any of this. I felt confused and overwhelmed. I don't want to leave this house. I don't have any connection to her place, and I'm not even sure what to think right now. Robert looked annoyed, probably because he didn't expect me to object. His reaction caught me completely off guard. What's the problem? My sister and I have been planning this for a while. So what? I was never included in any of these discussions. You both ignored me the whole time. Think about it, it's a great deal. Plus, there's a special garage for my motorcycle. But what about me? I asked. You like watching suspense shows, right? There's a TV in the new house too. Robert loves motorcycles and treasures his Harley Davidson, like it's the most important thing in the world. Meanwhile, I don't have any big hobbies, but I do enjoy watching suspense shows like CSI or Columbo on Netflix. But what about my commute? My bus and train ride would take way longer. It's only a little longer. A little longer. It'll take an extra 2 hours. Well, I can't ride my Harley. A 2-hour commute might even be good for you. You've gained some weight recently, so think of it as an opportunity to lose weight. I couldn't believe what he was saying. Even then, a 2-hour commute is ridiculous. I can't do that every day. But Robert didn't seem to care. He was already lost in his dreams of living in the new house with its custom garage just for his Harley. Robert seemed genuinely surprised and annoyed that I was actually attached to our old house. Then, out of nowhere, he gave me an ultimatum. I'm giving our house to my sister and her husband. Their new house has a garage for my bike. Was there to refuse? If you don't agree, I'll divorce you, he declared. Wait, divorce? Did he just threaten me with divorce? I was stunned and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just give me a night to think about it, I managed to say before retreating to bed. I felt completely numb and spent the next couple of hours staring blankly at the ceiling. A new house with a garage for his bike. It felt like the place was built just to satisfy Robert's desires. After all, his sister and her husband didn't even own a motorcycle, so the fact that it included a garage meant they were planning to take our house from the very beginning. And Robert agreed to it all without even asking, meeting insult to injury. To top it off, he threatened me with divorce if I didn't go along with it. It was nothing short of a threat. I was furious. So, for the next 8 hours until dawn, I worked tirelessly on my phone, planning my next move. The following day, I told Robert I agreed to move out, but I had a few conditions. First, I needed 2 weeks to pack since I worked during the weekdays. Second, his sister and her family couldn't move in until we were completely out. Right? I asked. Well, yeah, I suppose so, Robert agreed. You got them to build a custom garage for your bike, so as a sign of gratitude, I want to leave this house in a pristine state. I added, let's have it professionally cleaned and handed over 2 weeks after we move out. Robert nodded, satisfied. With that, I started making calls to arrange everything while he wasn't around. The next 2 weeks flew by. Robert was cheerfully packing up, singing some weird song about his Harley. I called my sister-in-law and asked about the size of the rooms in their house to decide which furniture to take. They were also asking about our layout, as they were moving from a smaller apartment. For weeks, notice for such a big move seemed rushed for them, but I didn't care. Then, on the day of the move, something unexpected happened. Hello, we're from U-Haul Moving and Storage, said the first group of movers as they arrived. Please come in this way, Robert directed them excitedly. But then, moments later, hello, we're from 2 Men and a Truck, said another group of movers. What? Robert was completely bewildered. I had called 2 separate moving companies. One was for Robert and all his stuff, and the other was for me and mine. It was my move too, after all. I slid past my stunned husband and said, please come in, as I ushered the movers inside. Hold on, what's going on? Robert shouted. What's going on? I said we could move, so I'm moving to my new home, I replied calmly. Then, I turned to the movers. Okay, everyone, the boxes with yellow tape are mine. Please take those this way. U-Haul can handle the rest. Robert looked bewildered as I directed the movers, who worked quickly. An hour later, everything was packed up. Well then, thanks for everything, I said with a smile. I'll mail you the divorce papers later. Hold on a second, Robert shouted, panicking. I turned back slightly. You were the one who wanted a divorce, remember? Leaving him there, I quickly walked out and got into the taxi I had called earlier. But the taxi ride was short. As I stepped out, a familiar figure approached me. Long day. It was my older brother, Dave, who had come to help me move. Well, it's good that you found a place in just 2 weeks. It's a rental, but yeah, I replied. Once everything settles down, you can start looking for a permanent place. But man, what a disaster. It's more than just a disaster, I sighed, but I'll manage. I labeled all the necessary household items, like the rice cooker with yellow tape, so I'm set for now. Even though the movers handled the big items, I laughed. I inherited that London house. It was originally my grandfather's, so I can do whatever I want with it. My husband looked completely shocked. Then, my brother stepped in. Basically, the London house was inherited by Patricia, so it's her own property. It doesn't count as a marital asset. In other words, your husband don't have the right to decide to give it away to your sister or anything like that. What? My sister-in-law and husband were left speechless by this sudden revelation. Well, if you just told us that from the start, we wouldn't have had a problem, my sister-in-law blurted out, trying to cover up their surprise. Typical Robert and Patricia, they always tried to blame someone else when things didn't go their way. But I wasn't going to let that happen this time. You're the ones who threatened me with divorce and told me to keep quiet, so I couldn't say anything, I shot back. You threatened Patricia with divorce and didn't let her talk to you, Robert, my brother added. What else was she supposed to do? I then decided to sell the property. The house was too big for me to live in by myself. Anyway, in fact, the day after Robert threatened me, I made 2 phone calls, one to my brother, and the other to a demolition company. They said it would take 10 days to tear down the house. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law lives 2 hours away for hours round trip, and I made sure to give them very short notice about my move. They were too busy packing up to make the trip here. As for Robert, he had just moved into a newly built house near his sister's apartment. Well, at least he thought he did. When they arrived, they found that their new home was nothing but an empty lot. Enough is enough. We've lost our home, Robert shouted. We had to move twice because we temporarily stayed in Robert's old house when we found out our new house was gone. This doubled our moving costs. Do I look like I care? I said coldly. You should be thankful you're not being sued for trespassing on my property. You couldn't move in because I had the house torn down, so consider yourselves lucky. I couldn't help but laugh. Then I turned to Robert and added, do you really think a woman who nags about every little expense is laid back? You're really funny. Dave interrupted, saying, being dismissive of others doesn't make you laid back, it just makes you shallow. My usually quiet brother-in-law then spoke up. Wait, does that mean you didn't have Patricia's permission when all this moving started? That's right, I said. They just told me to be quiet, and my husband threatened me. They got excited and started planning everything on their own. I explained everything, and suddenly, my timid brother-in-law began to shake with anger. What the heck were you thinking? He shouted at his wife. You've been wasting money shopping in Boston and Chinatown for the past 3 months, leaving me and the kids behind. You sold the car because you decided to move here and said we didn't need it anymore. But we can't live without a car in this area, and this house only has a garage for a motorcycle. Do you realize how badly you've messed up our family? His wife, my sister-in-law, looked completely shocked. She had never seen him this furious before. Turning to me, my brother-in-law continued, Patricia, she told me, I'm taking my brother's house and moving. If you don't agree, I'll divorce you. What? It was almost funny how similar Robert and his sister thought. I could barely hold in my laughter. I knew I'd have a sore stomach tomorrow from all the laughing. Since I work from home as a software engineer, I figured it'd be better for the kids if their mom was around. So I agreed, my brother-in-law explained. But now, seeing how selfish she's been and how much it hurt our family, I realized something had to change. And when I heard what Robert said, it finally woke me up. He took a deep breath and turned to his wife. You threatened me, so now it's over for us, too. I'm going to protect and raise the kids by myself. I'll accept your threat like a proposition. Then I looked at Robert and added, Robert, I'm accepting your demand too. We're really finished now. Goodbye. What? Hold on. Robert panicked. If I lose the house, doesn't that mean the situation has changed? Exactly. The situation has changed, I replied firmly. So don't think you can talk your way out of this now. Both Robert and his sister started shouting and making excuses. My brother-in-law just shook his head and said, You two created this mess, got all worked up, and now you're back at square one. After that, my brother-in-law and I each hired a lawyer and began mediated divorces. My sister-in-law's new house went to her husband, along with full custody of the kids. She had always been a spendthrift, never home, and left all the childcare to her husband. Even on weekends, the kids had always felt lonely and distant from her. But now, living alone with their father, they're happier because they know he'll always be there for them. My sister-in-law's new house ended up belonging to her ex-husband because she didn't have enough income to pay the mortgage. It was surprising that she managed to spend so much money shopping in Boston every 3 months, even without a job. But in the end, her reckless spending didn't change, and I heard she ended up deep in debt. The motorcycle garage at the new house was going to be torn down and turned into a parking lot. My ex-husband, who had been working all along, wanted to buy a Harley motorcycle, but after being kicked out of my house and losing property in the divorce, he couldn't afford it. Losing the Harley and his favorite hobby made him furious, so he took it out on his lawyer and ended up drowning his sorrows in alcohol. As for my old house, I turned the empty land into a parking lot. Because it's close to Boston and Chinatown, I was able to charge a high price for parking, which brought in a steady income. Using that money, I bought myself a small 1-bedroom apartment. It's cozy and just what I needed. And now, I'm sitting in front of my big screen TV, grinning. My favorite show, CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, is on. I've got my beer in hand and the whole evening to myself. It feels amazing. After a relaxing bath, I'm all set, no makeup, comfy pajamas, my beer, my big screen TV, and CSI on. I have my favorite snacks and nuts beside me, and I sink into the couch as I hit the power button on the remote.